Hi, I'm Bart Barber. Let's talk about the Great Commission. You know, Jesus has commanded us to perform the work of the Great Commission, and we've talked about the fact that all of the commands in the Great Commission are collected in together because of the participial nature of the sentence. They're not separate commands, but they all make one command together. And as the way that we make disciples, that's described to us. We're not told to just go make disciples any way we can figure out. But instead, Jesus has commanded us to make disciples in precisely this way. And we've talked about what it means to go. We've talked about what it means to make disciples. We've talked about what it is to baptize them. And now we have an opportunity to talk about teaching and the role of teaching in the Great Commission. The sentence that we read in Matthew 28 and verse 20 is very explicit, and it tells us that we are supposed to be teaching these new disciples to observe all things whatsoever Jesus has commanded. So let's just look at that word by word. Teaching, I'm not going to spend much time trying to define that. Teaching means that you have a student and that you're imparting knowledge to them. But it's more than just imparting knowledge, because we're told by Jesus that we're supposed to be teaching them to keep, teaching them to observe. The Greek verb that is used there means that it's not enough. I'm not really fulfilling the Great Commission just by packing a bunch of new converts into a room and saying, here are the rules. Okay, that's not the idea. But instead, what we're supposed to do is to teach new believers how to live according to the things that Jesus has commanded. We are teaching them to keep, teaching them to observe the things that Jesus has commanded. You know, I heard a very popular movement of churches say that their philosophy is that they are fishers of men, and they say, we catch them and God cleans them. And in other words, what they were saying is, our approach to this is just to get people to pray the sinner's prayer. And if they'll do that, then we're not going to pay any attention to their behavior. Sure, we want their behavior to change, but God will take care of that. It's not an unpopular idea today that people will say, well, you know, you're saved by grace, you're sanctified by grace. And I believe both of those things to be true. But people will use that to say, you know, we present the gospel to people, we get people to make a profession of faith, and then God will take care of changing their behavior. We don't have anything to do with that. We're not going to meddle in other people's behavior. We're just going to let their behavior change. Well, I tell you, if that's your philosophy of ministry, then you're being disobedient to the Great Commission. You're being disobedient to what Jesus has commanded, because Jesus has commanded us that we should take new disciples and teach them to observe Jesus' commandments, that we're to instruct them in their lifestyle, instruct them in their living. God changes the behavior of people through the miracle of the gospel, but just like in getting people to accept the gospel, God in His wisdom uses the means of letting you and letting me go present the gospel to people so that they can be saved by the miraculous power of the Holy Spirit. God does that miraculously through the Spirit, but He lets us play a part in it in the same way. God miraculously sanctifies believers. He miraculously works to change our behavior, but He lets us have a part in that too. We have a role as churches and as fellow Christians and as pastors. We have a role in teaching people to observe the things that Jesus has commanded. The other thing that's interesting about what Jesus has stated about the role of teaching in the Great Commission is how expansive it is. He goes out of His way to be expansive about this. He doesn't say, teach them to observe the important things. He doesn't say, teach them to observe the things that seem to be most relevant, the things that fit in with the culture the most. Jesus explicitly says, teach them to observe, and one word would have been enough, panta, the word that means all, teaching them to observe all things. But then He comes back and qualifies that again and says, whatever it is that I have commanded, you're to teach them all of those things. What that means is that the Great Commission does not stop until all of the New Testament is exhausted, until we have taught people to live according to everything that we are commanded in the New Testament, until we are able to bring people to embrace the Scriptures. And by the way, the New Testament commends to us a role for the Old Testament as well. And until we've done that, until we've brought people to the point where they have seen everything that Jesus has commanded, and they've come to the point of practicing, observing those things, until that has happened, we are not finished with fulfilling the Great Commission. Now, in conclusion, I think there are some implications about this in our lives. First of all, it means that Great Commission ministry must be fully orbed ministry. We can't say that we've fulfilled the Great Commission if we can go somewhere and say, you know what, we've been able to get 2% of the people in this people group to pray a prayer and show up at a church service. Now, that's a great accomplishment. I'm thankful whenever we can do that. 2% is better than no percent. And praying the sinner's prayer, truly being converted, and becoming a member of a church, boy, that's an outstanding start. And may God cause that to happen everywhere. And certainly any place that has happened is ahead of a place where it hasn't. However noble it is, it's not the fulfillment of the Great Commission. If we want to fulfill the Great Commission, then we have an obligation to invest ourselves and pour ourselves out into the lives of people who have gone through those initial stages of the Great Commission. We've taken them through, we've gone into all the nations. We've taken them through receiving Christ and being baptized, and there's that one thing left to do. And if we really want to be Great Commission Christians, we need to be faithful to do that too. We need to be faithful to teach people to observe the commandments of Christ. Thanks for spending some time with me talking about the Great Commission. I'm Bart Barber. Have a great day.